A hospital corridor, harsh, fluorescent lights, and the lingering odor of disinfectant. This was the scene of a life-altering betrayal. Alexander Donovan, a self-made millionaire with polished shoes and a meticulously pressed suit, paced anxiously outside the delivery room. Inside, his wife Victoria, still heavily sedated, had just survived a harrowing birth. But the real twist wasn't her perilous condition. It was the visitor who arrived uninvited, Serena Blake, Alexander's longtime mistress, cradling a triumphant smirk. Before Victoria's tears had even dried, Alexander granted Serena a shocking privilege. He let her choose the baby's godfather. And everything that followed would reshape all their destinies forever. At 31 years old, Alexander Donovan was the envy of nearly every aspiring entrepreneur in Ravenwood City. Born with little more than tenacity and a knack for turning adversity into opportunity, Alexander rapidly climbed the financial ladder. He started in real estate, flipping dilapidated apartments in less desirable neighborhoods, then ventured into chain restaurants, and soon a technology startup that soared to success under his leadership. By the time he was 29, he was a multimillionaire. Polished, charismatic, and with a disarming smile, Alexander never seemed to back down from challenges or hide from attention. Victoria Middleton became Victoria Donovan on a crisp autumn afternoon 3 years ago. The wedding was lavish, held at the Donovan estate overlooking the river. Newspapers described the event as the social highlight of the season, featuring a guest list of local dignitaries, business moguls, and minor celebrities. But behind the pristine facade of white roses and champagne toasts, the new Mrs. Donovan was already aware that her husband's ambition came packaged with a restlessness she could never fully contain. Victoria had inherited old family money. Her father, Gregory Middleton, was a respected judge who insisted on strong moral virtues. Her mother, Catherine, was an active philanthropist at the city's largest hospital, and from a young age, Victoria learned the importance of compassion. She wasn't blind to the complexities of love and marriage, especially once she recognized hints that Alexander's heart roamed beyond the boundaries of their vows. He worked long hours, too many business trips, too many social gatherings with female colleagues whose names Victoria never quite learned. Still, Victoria tried to believe in him. She told herself that any man in Alexander's position would face temptation, but that eventually he would grow out of it. Their occasional arguments always ended in tears, mostly hers, and elaborate gifts from him. One day, it was a diamond bracelet with her initials, the next, a surprise trip to the Maldives. Alexander's logic seemed clear, brand new illusions to distract from cracks in the marriage. But illusions only last so long, and once Victoria found out she was pregnant, she thought this might bring him closer, quell his restlessness, and ground them in genuine love. What Victoria did not know was that Alexander had been involved in a secret affair with Serena Blake, a woman from a much different walk of life. Serena was cunning, confident, and mesmerizing in a rebellious way. She didn't come from money. She worked her way through bartending gigs, waitressing, and landed at a hedge fund as an assistant after she'd strategically befriended an executive. She was determined, she was strategic, and she had Alexander's ear and more. Alexander met Serena at a glitzy charitable gala. She was manning a booth that sold raffle tickets for a children's hospital, her black cocktail dress hugging her figure, her hair a cascade of raven curls. While Victoria was at the other side of the ballroom conversing with potential donors, Alexander found himself drawn to Serena's sharp wit. A week later, they were sleeping together. During the next few months, as Victoria's pregnancy blossomed, She believed they were heading to a happier, more stable place. She never suspected that just across town, Alexander was visiting Serena at her downtown penthouse. Like many illusions, the truth stayed hidden until it shattered spectacularly. By the 8th month of Victoria's pregnancy, her body had grown heavy and her ankles swollen. Yet she persisted in fulfilling her duties as a volunteer at the Children's Hospital, a philanthropic activity she had inherited from her mother. Everyone admired her unwavering spirit. She exuded radiance, a sense of kindness that you wouldn't expect in the cutthroat environment of high society. Meanwhile, Alexander's attention was increasingly divided. The tech startup he had invested in was at a critical juncture, preparing for a high-stakes IPO that promised to double his net worth. Seemingly every hour was swallowed by meetings with venture capitalists or PR representatives or traveling to potential investor gatherings. At least that was what he told Victoria. But for every hour he spent with business associates, he spent nearly as many moments entangled with Serena in some posh hotel suite or in her penthouse with the blinds drawn. The day before Victoria went into labor, Alexander received a phone call from an old friend, Leonard Lenny Patel, a childhood companion who had once been like a brother. Lenny, now an attorney, had heard rumors swirling around Alexander's extramarital exploits. Concerned, Lenny advised him to tread carefully. "You have too much to lose," he warned over the phone, his voice pressed low. Alexander brushed him off, retorting that everything was under control. He had no intention of letting the affair harm his marriage publicly. He had no illusions that Victoria might never find out, but he hoped to manage the fallout behind closed doors. No one would dare to confront him openly, he reasoned, especially with so much money and power at stake. Serena, however, had other ideas. She was tired of existing in the shadows, tired of being the hidden secret that Alexander locked away once he returned home. She pressed him for more, always testing how far she could push. The more secure she felt about Alexander's affections, the more brazen her requests. Unknown to him, she kept a digital diary full of pictures, voice recordings, and text messages safely stored on a password-protected app. If he ever tried to throw her aside, she would have leverage, and he knew that was a possibility. Then, at dawn, the phone call came that Victoria had gone into labor. She was taken to St. Helena's maternity ward, where her mother had once served as a volunteer nurse. The pregnancy was complicated by Victoria's high blood pressure. The doctors recommended an emergency C-section. Alexander was in the middle of a meeting at the time, but as soon as he heard, he rushed to the hospital. By the time he reached the operating room, Victoria was barely conscious, her hands trembling. She was frightened, but tried to smile. He squeezed her hand, offering the same reassuring smile she had grown to love and trust. Hours ticked by. The operation was fraught with complications. Victoria lost significant blood. Tension filled the hospital corridors as Alexander paced. Finally, a nurse emerged, announcing that mother and baby were stable, but Victoria would need extended recovery. Relief washed over him momentarily. That sense of relief would shatter the moment he saw who was waiting in the hallway. Serena stood near the vending machines, arms folded over her chic trench coat, eyes as cold as the steel chairs lining the wall. No one seemed to question her presence. She projected confidence as if she belonged there. Alexander's heart pounded, and not in a good way. He hissed at her under his breath, "What are you doing here?" And Serena simply answered, "Isn't it obvious? You promised me I'd be part of your life. This life." It was a threat and a statement rolled into one. More than anything, it was a preview of the drama that was about to explode in public view. Victoria's eyes fluttered open to bright hospital lights. Her body felt foreign-drugged and heavy, but the sense of something missing overwhelmed her. She instinctively reached for her stomach. It was deflated. Panic rose. Where was the baby? Just then a nurse stepped in, smiling. "He's in the nursery, dear. A healthy baby boy, 6 pounds and 4 ounces. You did great." Relief flooded Victoria, but fear soon replaced it when the nurse explained she had lost a considerable amount of blood and needed multiple transfusions. Victoria stared at her IV line, the beep of the monitor keeping pace with her anxious heartbeat. She felt alone in that sterile room. Where was Alexander? She didn't know that Alexander was standing just outside her door, locked in an intense conversation with Serena. The mistress insisted that after everything she'd put up with, she deserved a place in the baby's life. Alexander was torn between desperation to keep the secret hidden from Victoria and terror at what Serena might do if he denied her. Fearful of a catastrophic confrontation while his wife was in a fragile condition, he relented, barely controlling his anger. He proposed a private conversation somewhere else, sometime soon. "Not now," he whispered harshly. "This is not the place. Victoria's just out of surgery." But Serena was never one to wait. She pressed, "You promised me everything. Now you're a father. I want to be a part of his life, even if it's just in some official capacity. Let me choose the baby's godfather, or I go public." Alexander froze. The audacity of the demand hit him like a punch to the gut. Yet he recognized the glint in her eye, that unwavering confidence that she held all the cards. They both knew the scandal would be disastrous personally and for his business. If the story broke that the philanthropic, family-oriented Alexander Donovan had fathered a baby with his mistress, or was even suspected of infidelity during his wife's pregnancy, it would roil gossip columns and damage investor trust. He had pinned so many deals on his stable, gentlemanly image, so many illusions to uphold. "Fine," he conceded in a barely audible growl. "I'll let you choose the baby's godfather. But don't you dare cause a scene in here." Serena's lips curled into a satisfied smirk. "I knew you wouldn't let me down, darling," she said, letting her fingers linger on his lapel as she spun to leave. Inside the hospital room, Victoria felt a wave of vertigo. A nurse came in to check her vitals. Blood still seeped through the bandage near her C-section incision. The nurse replaced it, gently explaining, "You're still bleeding a bit, but we're monitoring you closely. You need to rest." Exhausted, Victoria closed her eyes, but an uneasy feeling gnawed at her. She had expected to see Alexander's face upon waking. She had expected him to cradle her hand, whisper soft reassurances. Instead, she felt the weight of emptiness. Across the corridor, a swirl of drama was unfolding. Alexander had to make sure Serena left before Victoria saw her. He escorted her down the hallway until they reached a side exit. Serena made no secret of her confidence, swaying her hips provocatively as if she reveled in the power she held. Alexander demanded she stay away for now, promising they would talk later or whenever you decide who this godfather should be. She shot him a pointed look, hopped into her waiting Uber, and disappeared into the city's bustling streets. By the time Alexander returned to Victoria's room, he had tried to rearrange his face into a mask of calm. He entered, quietly slipped his hand into hers, and kissed her forehead. "You're awake," he murmured. "I'm so sorry I wasn't here a minute ago. I had some issues with the doctors, insurance forms." He trailed off. Even in her drowsy state, Victoria noticed the tension in his eyes. She could sense something was off, but she was too weak to probe. "I'm just glad you're here," she whispered. He looked at his wife, pale, fragile, yet beautiful, even with tears drying on her cheeks, and guilt surged through him. At that moment, he wondered if everything was spiraling out of control. The mistress, the demands, the hidden truths, and now the baby and innocent life. He wanted to believe he could still fix it all. But some boundaries once crossed can't be easily undone. The next day, while Victoria was still weak and sedated in her private hospital room, the news spread that the baby boy had arrived. Flowers, gift baskets, and balloons poured in from business acquaintances, social acquaintances, and family. Catherine and Gregory Middleton arrived to see their daughter, each harboring their own quiet concerns about Alexander. Yet they knew they had to maintain a united front for Victoria. Having married off their only child, they wanted to trust her choice, even if they suspected that Alexander wasn't the glowing saint he pretended to be. Gregory, stoic as always, patted Alexander's shoulder. "Congratulations, son," he said with an even tone. "We are proud to have this new grandchild." Alexander forced a smile. "Thank you, sir. It means a lot." While nurses came in and out checking on mother and child, Alexander couldn't shake the creeping dread that Serena's threat loomed over everything. He clutched his phone in his pocket, each vibration sending his pulse racing. Would she contact him at the worst possible moment? Would she show up here again, spouting her demands? Amid the gifts, there was one that stood out. A single red rose in a slim vase, accompanied by a note in cursive writing, "Remember your promise." Alexander quickly hid it before Victoria could notice. Later that afternoon, Lenny Patel dropped by to share a celebratory cigar, or at least the sentiment of one, as they typically did during life's biggest milestones. Lenny gave Alexander a knowing look. Got a moment to chat. They retreated to an empty waiting area. Lenny's voice was hushed. "I hear Serena's in town. I'm guessing that rumor about you two wasn't just idle talk." Alexander frowned, glancing around to ensure privacy. "It's complicated, Lenny. I'm handling it." "You'd better handle it fast," Lenny warned. "These things have a way of exploding. If Victoria finds out in this condition, I know." Alexander cut him off, eyes darting. "But she's threatened to go public if I don't give her some concession. Let's just say I made her a promise to choose the baby's godfather. As insane as that sounds, it might keep her quiet for a while." Lenny stared at him, disbelief etched on his face. "You're letting your mistress pick your child's godfather while your wife is in recovery. Alex, you can't be serious." The grimace on Alexander's face said it all. "I'm dead serious, Lenny. I don't have a choice right now." Lenny rubbed a hand across his brow. "This is madness. Who knows what she'll do with that power? Godfather isn't just a meaningless title. It's got emotional resonance, and it's tied into your family. If word gets out that she's the one calling the shots—" "I know," Alexander repeated. "But let's get through this fiasco. I'll manage it." Despite Lenny's attempts at caution, Alexander was in a corner with no immediate way out. When they returned to Victoria's room, she was half awake, her mother at her side, the baby resting in a bassinet. The tension in Alexander's chest softened momentarily at the sight of his newborn son. Innocent small fingers curled dreaming softly. Could anything be more pure? Victoria's gaze moved to Alexander, searching for comfort. He leaned in, kissing her forehead. The weight of his secrets was suffocating, but he tried to shove it aside. This moment was supposed to be about the miracle of new life, if only it were that simple. Once Victoria returned home, the Donovan mansion was awash in baby paraphernalia. A brand new nursery suite, with a custom crib, plush toys, and pastel-colored murals, filled what used to be a home office. Victoria's bandaged abdomen and low energy levels kept her mostly confined to bed or to a wheelchair for the first 2 weeks. During this period, Alexander tried his best to be attentive, changing diapers, feeding the baby, walking the halls with the newborn at night, gently rocking him to sleep. The baby's name was Christian, selected by Victoria to honor her grandfather. But in the quiet moments as Victoria recuperated, Alexander's phone screen lit up with messages from Serena. "We need to talk about the Godfather situation. Don't ignore me. I have my eye on someone." He responded curtly, telling her to let him get through these first weeks, but Serena was nothing if not persistent. Finally, Alexander knew he had to meet her privately, away from prying eyes. He told Victoria he had urgent business out of town, some final negotiations for the tech startup's IPO. Victoria, though disappointed, understood. After all, that business was essential to their livelihood and the financial security of their new baby. Alexander met Serena late one evening at a secluded rooftop bar. She was already sipping a martini when he arrived. Her lipstick was a vivid crimson, contrasting with the black satin dress that hugged her figure. She greeted him with a devilish grin. "You look tired," she said, faux concern dripping from her voice. "Serena, let's cut to the chase." "Who do you want to be the Godfather?" Alexander asked, sliding into the seat across from her, ignoring the elaborate city view in the background. She took another slow sip, then leaned in. "I gave it a lot of thought," she began. "I want someone who can influence you, someone you'll have to respect, so I can ensure my place in your life is secure, even if indirectly." His jaw tightened. "That's not how Godfather selections work," he hissed, keeping his voice low. "It's meant to be a family or close friend. We trust, Victoria and I. You picking some random person to wield power over me won't fly." Serena shrugged. "Not random. But you remember Dominic Russo? He's back in town." Alexander's eyes flicked with surprise. Dominic Russo was an influential power broker and the CEO of a private equity firm. He was known for his aggressive tactics and willingness to back shady deals to get what he wanted. Alexander had done business with him once, but had kept him at arm's length since. The man was manipulative, wealthy, and had ties to some questionable circles. "Russo, you're crazy," Alexander said. "He's not even a friend. Why would you pick him?" A sly smile curved Serena's lips. "He's already put money into your business, hasn't he? A few years back. And you owe him a favor or two, like that hush-hush acquisition you needed his capital for. If Russo is the Godfather, you'll have to play nice with me, or he'll find out about your double life. Maybe he'll find a way to profit from that knowledge." Alexander bristled. He felt cornered. Serena had done her homework. Victoria won't accept this. She'd never let Russo near our son. "You'll make her accept it," Serena said flatly. "Tell her it's an important business move or something. She loves you. She'll come around, or at least she'll be too exhausted by the new baby to fight back much. She's in a vulnerable spot." Alexander swallowed the revulsion rising in his throat. He was trapped by his secrets, forced into a twisted situation. "Fine," he said, after a long pause, wanting nothing more than to end this conversation. "But after this, you're out of our lives. No more contact, no more dropping by unannounced. Stay away from my family." She gave him a mocking pout. "We'll see. You know how I get when I'm not treated well." He rose abruptly, wanting to walk away, but forced himself to keep calm. "This ends soon, Serena," he repeated. Then he left the city lights, reflecting off the tears of anger and regret that threatened to surface. Convincing Victoria to accept Dominic Russo as Christian's godfather was a nearly impossible mission. Alexander tested the waters a few nights later, after the baby had fallen asleep, and Victoria was too drained to move from the bedroom sofa. "Honey," he began gently, sitting beside her. "We still need to decide on Christian's godparents. Your parents are religious, so I thought we should follow tradition." Victoria's tired eyes showed a flicker of curiosity. "Right. I was actually thinking of my cousin Rose for godmother. But about Godfather? I assumed maybe your friend Lenny. He's been with us through so much." A wave of guilt washed over Alexander. He indeed would have chosen Lenny in a heartbeat. But Lenny was the last person Serena would allow, because Lenny could see right through her manipulations. "I was considering Dominic Rousseau." Alexander forced out the words, tasting bitter in his mouth. Victoria's brow furrowed. "Dominic Rousseau, the private equity guy. I've heard questionable things about him." "He's been a loyal investor," Alexander said, spinning the partial truth. "He's supported us financially, and it might help the business if we forge closer ties." Her eyes widened with alarm. "This isn't about business, Alexander. It's about Christian's spiritual and moral guidance. A godfather is supposed to be someone who will look out for his best interests, who will set a positive example, not just some chess piece on a corporate board." Alexander placed a hand gently on hers. "I know, sweetheart, but trust me. We have to maintain certain alliances to ensure Christian's future is secure. It's complicated." Tears welled up in Victoria's eyes. She was exhausted physically and emotionally. She looked at her husband, searching for logic. "Alex, is this truly about Christian's future, or is there something you're not telling me?" His heart pounded, a cacophony of guilt and fear. "Please trust me on this. I've never asked you for anything so important in this way. You know I love our son. I wouldn't propose something that would harm him." Reluctantly, Victoria nodded, but her eyes were filled with doubt. "We'll talk about this later," she said, too fatigued to argue. "But Alex, promise me there's no hidden motive." "I promise," he whispered, feeling a chill run through him at the blatant lie. Days later, a formal invitation was extended to Dominic Rousseau from the Donovans, requesting he consider the role of Christian's godfather. Dominic, with his slicked-back hair and a knack for reading vulnerabilities, accepted graciously, almost too eagerly. A private dinner was arranged at the Donovan estate for Dominic to meet Victoria. The tension in the air that night was palpable. Victoria remained polite but distant, and Dominic laid on the charm, discussing philanthropic ventures and quoting famous philosophers about responsibility and tradition. Alexander could see the faint lines of disquiet in Victoria's brow, but for the most part, she hid her concerns. When the dinner ended, Dominic pulled Alexander aside. "So you want me to be your kid's godfather?" he said smoothly. "Serena told me you'd approach me, but I didn't think you'd actually go through with it. Gotta say, I'm intrigued." "Serena's involvement ends here," Alexander snapped, struggling to keep his voice low. "I'm paying her off and shutting this down." Dominic grinned, flashing the wolfish smile that had sent chills down the spines of many. "Oh, Alexander, I think you underestimate that woman. She's got her own agenda and a carefully curated one. For now, I'll play along with your family tradition, but I expect you to return the favor when I call." Alexander tensed. "What do you want?" "Nothing yet," Dominic said, the grin never leaving his face. "But if I'm your son's godfather, I expect certain doors to be opened for me when I knock. A little insider tip, a little political backing, a little help with my expansions. We'll talk specifics later." "Congratulations, Daddy." Then Dominic swaggered out of the estate, leaving Alexander feeling trapped in a labyrinth of lies. The more he tried to contain the chaos, the deeper he sank. And Serena, the puppet master of this twisted stage, was waiting in the wings, her next move uncertain but guaranteed to sting. Victoria's health improved slowly, yet she never fully recovered her trust in Alexander's judgment. She found solace in small joys with baby Christian, his delicate coos, the way his tiny hand curled around her finger. But she noticed an inconsistency in Alexander's behavior. He seemed restless, frequently making phone calls in hushed tones, stepping out of the room to answer messages. She confronted him once. "Alex, you've been distant. Even when you're in the same room, you seem miles away." He forced a laugh. "I'm juggling a lot, honey. The IPO, the new baby, and dealing with investors like Russo. I'm trying my best." She looked down, tears threatening to spill. "I've just gone through a traumatic birth. I nearly died in surgery. And I need my husband, not just a caretaker or a checkbook." His expression softened, and genuine remorse flickered in his eyes. "I'm sorry, Vic. I promise to do better. Just bear with me. Once this IPO is done, everything will settle." In truth, Alexander was frantic. He spent his days scrambling to keep Serena appeased while finalizing the IPO. That meant setting up secret payments, ensuring she wouldn't sabotage him. But her demands grew. She wanted a high-level position in one of Alexander's companies. She claimed she had the credentials. She was qualified after all. Alexander pushed back, but she threatened to leak photos of them together to tabloids. So he arranged for her to become a consultant at Donovan Ventures with a generous monthly stipend. It was hush money, disguised as a professional service agreement. Meanwhile, Lenny Patel kept urging him to come clean. "The longer you keep this from Victoria, the worse it will be when she finds out. And trust me, Alex, she will find out." Alexander ignored the advice. Admitting the affair to Victoria would devastate her, especially after the near-fatal birth. No, Alexander thought he could salvage this situation if he managed Serena and kept Dominic Russo at bay. But the cracks were already visible to everyone else. Catherine Middleton pulled Alexander aside at a family gathering when Victoria was resting. "What's going on with you and my daughter?" she asked bluntly, her eyes sharp. "She's unhappy, I can see it." Alexander mustered a smile. "It's just stress, Catherine. The baby, the IPO, so many demands. I love Victoria, I assure you." Her gaze was unwavering. "I hope so, because if you hurt her, you'll have me and Gregory to answer to." He nodded quickly, hoping the conversation would end. The more people who noticed the tension, the shakier the entire facade became. In a surprising twist, Serena requested a meeting with Victoria. She sent a cryptic message to Alexander, "I need to see your wife alone. Non-negotiable." Alarmed, he refused outright, but Serena threatened to show up at the Donovan mansion uninvited. To avoid a humiliating confrontation, he arranged for the two women to meet in a discreet cafe near the outskirts of Ravenwood. Victoria arrived curious and somewhat anxious. She recognized Serena as the woman she had spotted at a few public events, a striking brunette with a sharp intellect. But Alexander had always brushed off her significance, calling Serena a business acquaintance. Now, face to face, Victoria could sense an undercurrent of tension. "Thank you for coming," Serena said, gesturing for Victoria to join her at a secluded corner table. A cappuccino sat before her, untouched. Victoria sat down, her posture stiff. "I'm not sure what this is about, but Alex said you're helping with some business projects." A brief, humorless laugh escaped Serena's lips. "Yes, that's one way to put it." She leaned forward, voice quiet. "But I want to talk about you and him, and that child you have." A chill ran through Victoria. "Excuse me," Serena inhaled deeply, as if preparing for a performance. "Let's skip pleasantries. I know you've picked Dominic Russo as the baby's godfather. But did Alex tell you who insisted on that choice?" Victoria's eyes flashed with confusion and suspicion. He said it was a business arrangement, something about forging alliances for the IPO. Sweet Serena said mockingly that he's lying even now. The truth is, I made him do it. I've been intimately involved with Alexander since long before your baby was born, and I told him to name Dominic Russo as Godfather, or I'd blow everything wide open. Victoria's heart pounded so fiercely she thought she might faint. Are you serious? You're claiming you're Alexander's mistress. Serena nodded slowly, her gaze unwavering. Call it what you want, but yes, that's the short of it. We met at a gala, we got involved, and I've been part of his life ever since. He's been keeping me happy with hush money and favors, but frankly, I'm tired of being a secret. Anger and disbelief warred within Victoria. Why are you telling me this now, if you're benefiting from the arrangement? A flicker of something that might have been regret crossed Serena's face. Because I want more. I want him to myself, or at least to be recognized. And if that means you walk away, so be it. You should know the truth. Tears burned in Victoria's eyes. She stared at the woman across from her, feeling her world crumble. You want me to leave him just like that? We have a child together. I'm aware, Serena interrupted. But now you know the situation. If you stay with him, you'll do so with full knowledge of what he's been doing. And let's not forget, if you think he'll change, you're kidding yourself. Men like Alex, once they taste a double life, they rarely go back. Victoria felt dizzy. Her hands shook. Part of her wanted to lunge across the table and slap Serena for her cruelty, for her arrogance. Another part recognized that the bitterness in Serena's voice indicated her own heartbreak. You're telling me this out of spite, or do you actually love him? Serena's smirk faded. Love, I think I convinced myself once that I loved him. But now I realize I love his power, his ambition. He's addictive, but I won't be sidelined any longer. You can interpret that however you like. Trembling, Victoria stood. I need to leave. She grabbed her purse and rushed out of the cafe. Behind her, Serena didn't try to stop her. As soon as Victoria left, Serena wiped a single tear that slipped down her cheek. Maybe she was breaking too, in a twisted way. Victoria barely remembered driving home. Her mind churned with images of Alexander's betrayal, the months of secrecy, the near-death experience at the hospital, and the quiet heartbreak of discovering that the life she thought she had was a mirage. She wondered how she had been so blind. Or had she known deep down, but refused to see it? When she arrived at the mansion, baby Christian was in the arms of a nanny. Victoria whisked him away and locked herself in the nursery, tears streaming down her face, unsure of her next move. She only knew that the illusions she had clung to were gone. That evening, Alexander returned from a long day of meetings to find Victoria in the living room, pale and trembling, her eyes bloodshot from crying. She held Christian in her arms as if drawing strength from the baby's warmth. The tension was thick enough to slice with a knife. What happened? Alexander asked, concern crossing his features. Is Christian okay? Christian is fine, Victoria said, coldly, but our marriage isn't. Alexander's stomach dropped. What do you mean? She gave him a searing glare. I spoke to Serena Blake today. Your mistress. She told me everything. About how you've been meeting her, paying her, how she made you choose Dominic Russo as our son's godfather. All these lies, Alexander. He paled, his carefully constructed mask crumbling. He stammered, Vic, I can explain. She shook her head vigorously, tears spilling down her cheeks. No more lies, no more. I can explain. You told me nothing when I needed truth the most. We could have faced it together, but you chose to betray me over and over. How could you let her have a say in our baby's life while I was in the hospital bleeding? Alexander reached out, his voice trembling with remorse. I was scared. She threatened to ruin everything, my reputation, our business, the IPO. I wanted to protect you. Protect me. Victoria nearly choked on the words. Protect me from what? Knowing you were unfaithful, or from your mistress's manipulations. You've broken every vow you made. Alexander's eyes flickered with helplessness. I was stupid. I made a terrible mistake, one that spiraled. I never wanted to hurt you, especially not while you were pregnant. He paused, searching for some grand gesture. Instead, all he could say was, I love you. Victoria sniffled, pressing Christian tighter against her. Don't say that. Not now. You can't claim love after months of deception. You exploited my vulnerability when I was at my weakest. And now you want to hide behind, I love you. I can't even look at you. She handed Christian to the nanny, who had been hovering in the background. Then she turned back to Alexander, voice trembling. I need space. I need to think. My parents have offered to let me stay at their lake house. I'm leaving tomorrow, and I'm taking Christian with me. Panic clutched Alexander's chest. Don't do this, Victoria, please. We can fix it. I'll break ties with Serena permanently. I'll come clean to the public if I have to, anything you want. Just don't take Christian away. She shook her head, her tears flowing. I'm not punishing you by taking Christian away. I'm protecting my son from a toxic environment. If we have any chance of repairing our marriage, it's going to require a lot of work. And I can't do that here with Serena lurking around every corner. His voice broke. Victoria, why? But he had no words left to bridge the cavernous betrayal. She walked past him, shoulders hunched, heartbreak etched into every step. The next morning, Victoria and Christian left in the back seat of an SUV with Catherine Middleton riding shotgun, leaving Alexander standing alone on the grand front steps of the mansion. For the first time in his life, all the wealth and power he had acquired meant nothing, and he realized what true emptiness felt like. In the following weeks, the story of Alexander Donovan's affair crept into rumor mills. Tabloid reporters sniffed around, printing vague headlines like Donovan family rocked by scandal and business tycoon's secret dealings with mysterious woman. It wasn't front-page news yet, but the tension among investors was palpable. Some threatened to pull out of the IPO if Alexander's personal scandal jeopardized the company's public image. At Donovan Ventures, morale plummeted. Rumors spread that Serena Blake was a paid consultant. Some employees questioned her qualifications. Others whispered she was the boss's mistress. The hush money line item was discovered by an overly curious accountant, but Lenny Patel, acting as Alexander's legal advisor, managed to cover it up with confidentiality clauses. Still, it was a time bomb. If Serena decided to go fully public with her evidence, pictures, text messages, intimate videos, Alexander's empire could topple. Even Dominic Russo grew cautious. He called Alexander. This scandal isn't good for business, he said flatly. The IPO depends on a pristine image. You better keep Serena in line or my lawyers will bail. Everywhere Alexander turned, the walls were closing in. His mind replayed the image of Victoria sobbing, packing her suitcases, taking his newborn son away. He found no solace at the estate so empty and cold without them. At night, he hardly slept, tortured by guilt and worry. Eventually, he confronted Serena one final time in her penthouse. You destroyed my life, he said, voice ragged. Victoria left me. The IPO is on the rocks. What more do you want from me? Serena's expression flashed with anger. "I destroyed your life. Let's not forget you initiated this affair. I only demanded what you promised me. Recognition, a place in your world. If your precious wife is gone, that just means you're free to be with me now." His face twisted with disbelief. "I don't want to be with you. Don't you see I love Victoria? I was an idiot to betray her. You and I, it was a mistake, fueled by lust and greed, and it's over." She slapped him, tears brimming in her eyes. "Then you'll regret it," she said in a shaky voice. "I won't let you walk away without a fight." Alexander left the penthouse, a welt forming on his cheek and a deeper ache in his soul. He felt hollow, as if every step led him further into darkness. During this tumultuous period, Lenny once again urged Alexander to come clean to the public. "Manage the narrative. Alex, if the tabloids break the story first, you'll look defensive and deceitful. Issue a statement. Apologize, maybe. People love a redemption arc if it's genuine." Alexander wrestled with the idea, eventually deciding that humility might be his only salvation, personally and professionally. He scheduled a press conference under the guise of announcing the final stages of the IPO. But in front of a room of reporters and camera crews, he began by addressing his personal failings. "I have made grave mistakes in my private life that have recently become the subject of rumors. It's time I own up to them. I betrayed my wife Victoria, who is the love of my life, and I deeply regret the hurt I caused. I ask for privacy for my family during this time, as we work through the fallout of my actions. My focus now is on being a better man for my wife, my son, and my community." He spoke for a few minutes, voice trembling with contrition. Some reporters probed with invasive questions, but Alexander resisted the urge to spin or evade. He told the truth, at least the broad strokes. His admission rippled through social media, dividing public opinion. Some praised him for accountability, others condemned him for moral hypocrisy. The Donovan brand was shaken, but not entirely toppled. Victoria watched the press conference from her parents' lake house, tears sliding down her cheeks. She recognized the sincerity in his voice, the fear in his eyes. Part of her felt a glimmer of hope. Another part feared it was too little too late. She still loved Alexander, she couldn't deny that. But how do you rebuild trust when it's been shattered by so many lies? In the weeks that followed Alexander's public confession, a tense and uneasy calm settled over the Donovan family's fractured world. The scandal that once threatened to reduce everything to ash had not disappeared, but the flames had been doused, at least for now. The IPO had gone forward, though it lacked the triumphant fanfare Alexander once envisioned. Investors remained wary. Dominic Russo retained his title as Christian's Godfather, but the christening ceremony was quietly postponed. Victoria refused to finalize anything that cemented Russo's role in their child's life, not after discovering how that choice had been manipulated by deceit and coercion. On paper, he was the Godfather. In practice, he was a name Victoria refused to utter around her son. Meanwhile, the woman at the center of the storm, Serena Blake, was learning that notoriety had a price. The moment the affair broke in the press, she became a magnet for vitriol. The tabloids branded her the other woman, but the internet was crueler, dragging her reputation through virtual mud. Her professional connections began to dry up, her inbox flooded with cold shoulders and cancelled meetings. Even at Donovan Ventures, whispers grew louder. People eyed her warily in hallways, speaking in half-hushed tones behind closed doors. A few refused to work with her altogether. Others simply avoided her presence entirely, as if scandal were contagious. Despite the backlash, Serena kept her head high in public, but behind closed doors, the isolation gnawed at her. All the power she had fought for, the leverage she once held over Alexander, now felt hollow. She had forced her way into a man's life, only to find herself hated by his world and shut out from his heart. It was not the victory she imagined. Meanwhile, at the lake house, Victoria and Christian embraced the quiet life. Each morning, Victoria would carry her son to the lakeside dock, wrapped in a soft blanket, and sit with him in silence as the mist hovered over the water. Those moments brought a fragile peace, even as grief and betrayal lingered just beneath the surface. She wasn't ready to forgive, but she wasn't prepared to shut the door either. Alexander began visiting regularly, sometimes with flowers, sometimes empty-handed, but always with humility etched into his face. He never assumed anything. He would ask permission to hold Christian, and when Victoria allowed it, he'd sit in a rocking chair by the window, whispering lullabies in a shaky voice that only his son could hear. One late afternoon, as the sun dipped behind the trees, painting the lake in shades of copper and rose, Victoria invited him to join her on the porch swing. They sat in silence. At first, the only sound, the soft creak of the swing and the distant call of birds. Finally, she broke the stillness. "I watched your press conference," she said, her voice soft but steady. "I saw the way your hands trembled when you talked about us." Alexander looked down, ashamed. "I didn't deserve to talk about us, not after everything I did." "You didn't," she agreed, eyes fixed on the lake. "But you did it anyway, and part of me believed you." He turned to her cautiously. "I meant every word, Victoria. I still do. I know I can't undo what I did, but I will spend the rest of my life proving to you and to Christian that I'm not that man anymore." Tears gathered in her eyes. "You broke me, Alexander. You broke every piece of the life I thought we had. But Christian deserves his father, and as much as I wish I could erase what happened, I know it's not that simple." A single tear slid down Alexander's cheek. "I'm not asking you to erase anything. Just let me be part of your healing, if you'll let me." Victoria leaned into him, not fully, just enough to rest her head gently on his shoulder. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a start. "We'll take it one day at a time," she whispered. And as the breeze picked up, rustling the autumn leaves, Alexander felt, for the first time in months, a glimmer of something he had thought he'd lost forever: hope. Serena left Ravenwood soon after. Rumor had it she took a job on the West Coast, perhaps seeking a fresh start away from the scandal. She never confronted Alexander again, nor did she reveal more secrets to the tabloids. A year later, a small gossip piece mentioned she was seen in Los Angeles with a new man smiling. Maybe she'd found a different route to happiness, or at least a momentary respite from the chaos she'd created. As for Dominic Russo, he remained Christian's official godfather on paper. But Victoria and Alexander reached a quiet agreement to keep his involvement distant. They never organized the formal christening, leaving the position largely symbolic. Dominic benefited from some business favors, but Alexander stayed vigilant, determined not to let Russo manipulate him further. Victoria and Alexander entered marriage counseling. Therapy was grueling. Every session forced Alexander to confront his dishonesty and disregard for Victoria's well-being. But gradually, cracks began to heal, replaced by a tentative bond that was more honest, if still scarred. 6 months later, Christian took his first wobbly steps across the living room floor of the Donovan mansion, which Victoria had moved back into, cautiously but purposefully. Alexander, watching with awe and tears in his eyes, scooped the boy up and kissed his cheeks. In that fleeting moment, the father's heart brimmed with gratitude and humility. He vowed never to squander another chance. Life wasn't perfect. Some days were still clouded by mistrust, and the specter of the affair lingered. But each sunrise brought an opportunity for redemption, and each sunset offered a moment of reflection on what truly mattered. No amount of wealth could mend a broken heart. Only love, patience, and honesty could do that. In the end, it wasn't Dominic Russo or the IPO or even Serena Blake who held power over the future of the Donovan family. It was Alexander's willingness to face the consequences of his actions and Victoria's capacity for forgiveness, limited though it might be. The path forward was uncertain, but it was theirs, and they would walk it together, step by step. Thank you for joining us on this riveting journey through betrayal, heartbreak, and the fragile hope of redemption. Our story showcased the high stakes of secrets and the relentless grip of ambition, and how one man's thirst for success nearly cost him everything. If Alexander's cautionary tale teaches us anything, it's that love and trust are priceless treasures. No amount of wealth or power can replace the honesty and loyalty that form the bedrock of a family. If you found yourself on the edge of your seat, craving more stories of high drama and intimate secrets, please show your support. Like this video to let us know you enjoyed the story. Share it with friends who love a good real-life drama, and subscribe to stay up to date on our newest releases. Every thumbs up and subscription helps us continue bringing you unforgettable tales. Until next time, stay intrigued, stay compassionate, and keep watching.